At the family dinner, my parents said, "Nobody needs your money or you." My sister agreed. I stayed silent, just quietly doing things. But what they never expected was what I did next. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. My name is Maya, and that sentence changed everything for me. I remember sitting there at the table, staring down at my plate, as if the mashed potatoes were suddenly the most interesting thing in the world. My heart wasn't just hurt. It felt crushed, stepped on, and dismissed like trash on a sidewalk. I didn't react, not even a flinch. I kept my face neutral, my breathing steady, my voice locked behind my teeth. Because if I spoke in that moment, I would have broken. Dinner had started like any other family gathering. My mom fussing with the table settings, my dad complaining about work, and my older sister Emily talking about her perfect, polished life. The life they were all proud of. Her new car, her new house, her plans to start a family, her raise, which she made sure we all heard about 3 times before the appetizers were even served. My parents listened like she was royalty. Every word she spoke was met with praise, validation, love. Then there was me, the afterthought, the supporting character in my own family, the one who worked quietly, lived quietly, existed quietly. I never expected them to shower me in applause, but I never expected to be told I wasn't needed either. It happened when the conversation shifted to finances, their will, future plans, money, responsibility. Emily joked, "Well, obviously everything goes to me. Maya doesn't even need anything." She laughed. They laughed. Then my mom, without a hint of softness, said, "She's right. Maya, nobody needs your money or you. You're in your own bubble. You're independent. You'll manage." And my dad nodded like it was a settled fact. I remember my chest tightening, my stomach dropping, and the room suddenly feeling too small, too cold, too loud, even though everything went silent inside my head. Emily smirked across the table, her chin lifted with the confidence of someone who had never been second in her life. I looked at her, then at my parents, and instead of fighting back, I smiled. A small, calm, unreadable smile. Because something inside me shifted. Not anger. Not desperation. Not heartbreak. Clarity. For years, I had waited for validation, to be seen, acknowledged, respected. I had worked hard, helped them financially when they needed it, showed up when nobody else did, and supported Emily through problems she created herself. And still, this is what I was to them. Unnecessary. Replaceable. A background presence. So I stopped waiting. For the rest of dinner, I stayed quiet. I helped bring dishes to the sink. I wiped the table. I packed leftovers. I moved with calm precision. No tears, no confrontation. Emily watched me with confusion, expecting me to break or defend myself. I didn't, because silently, a plan was forming. After the dishes, I stepped outside for air. The night was cool, still, peaceful, the opposite of what I felt. I stood under the porch light, hands in my pockets, and whispered to myself, "If they don't need me, then they don't get me. Not my time, not my help, not my support, not my presence." I went back inside, grabbed my coat, and told them I was leaving.
No dramatic exit. No tears.
Just a calm expression and a quiet voice. "Thank you for dinner," I said. They barely looked up. Emily waved a lazy goodbye like I was some distant relative she barely remembered. As I walked to my car, I didn't feel weak. For the first time in my life, I felt powerful. Because I realized something I had ignored for far too long. Sometimes, losing someone is not a loss, it's freedom. I drove away with the windows cracked open and the cool air brushing against my face, and I made myself a promise. One day, they would regret those words. Not because I would hurt them, but because they would come to understand exactly what it feels like to need someone who no longer cares to stay. And they never expected what was coming next. The days after that dinner felt strangely quiet. Normally, I would text my mom updates about work or send Emily funny things I saw online. But this time, I didn't reach out. Not out of anger, but choice. For once, I pulled away first. I focused on myself. I still remember waking up the next morning with a calmness I wasn't used to. My apartment was small, but suddenly it didn't feel like a sign of failure. It felt like mine. Every shelf, every mug, every plant, I paid for it. I built the life I had, even if it wasn't perfect. And maybe that counted for something. I worked as a junior data analyst at a tech company. It wasn't glamorous and the pay wasn't great yet, but I liked what I did. I liked solving things. I liked structure. And most importantly, I liked that my work mattered somewhere, even if it didn't at home. That week, something unexpected happened at work. My manager, Ethan, stopped by my desk and said, "Hey Maya, we need someone detail-oriented to help test a feature for our new software launch. Your reports are always clean. You want in?" Opportunities like that didn't come often. I said yes immediately. That project changed the trajectory of everything. Suddenly, I wasn't invisible. I was presenting ideas. I was being included in higher-level meetings. People were asking for my feedback. It felt foreign at first, being valued, but it also felt right. While the project moved forward, I stayed late at the office often. Some nights, I stared at the city skyline from the 14th floor window and thought, why did I ever let anyone convince me I wasn't enough? Around the second month of the project, Ethan approached me again, this time with something bigger. "You ever thought about leadership?" he asked. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because nobody had ever asked me something like that. Ethan didn't laugh. "I mean it," he continued. "You work quietly, but you work powerfully. That's rare." Something about those words stuck with me. Quiet didn't mean weak. Quiet didn't mean lesser. Quiet didn't mean unwanted. Quiet could mean focused. Quiet could mean observant. Quiet could mean unstoppable. Around the same time, I signed up for online certifications, late-night studying, early morning coffee, repeating lessons until they made sense. Slowly, I started to build skills that made me valuable, not just at work, but in the industry. Months passed, and during those months, my family barely contacted me. No check-ins.
No apologies. No invitations.
Just silence. The same silence they expected me to accept all my life. But I didn't break. Instead, I grew. By the 8th month of the project, something major happened. The software launched successfully, and my contribution was significant enough that upper management noticed. 2 weeks later, I was promoted. Not to assistant. Not to support. To project lead. With the promotion came new responsibilities, a bigger office, a better salary, and finally stability. I remember sitting at my new desk after the congratulations emails died down, staring at the nameplate that read, "Maya Lawson, Project Lead." And without meaning to, I cried. Not because of the title, but because it symbolized something bigger. Validation. Belonging. Worth. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't unnecessary. I wasn't forgettable. I mattered. Even if my family didn't see it. That night, I treated myself to a nice dinner. Nothing fancy, just a warm meal and a quiet restaurant. But as I sat there enjoying it, my phone buzzed. A message from my mom. "We're having a family dinner Sunday. It would be nice if you showed up."
Mom. No apology. No acknowledgement. No worms.
Just expectation. For a moment, I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Then I smiled, that same calm smile I had the night everything changed. Because now, things were different. I wasn't going to walk into dinner, silently again. And they had no idea who I had become. Sunday came faster than I expected. I stood in front of my mirror, adjusting the blazer I wore, a soft, charcoal gray that made me feel grounded, confident, and collected. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't meant to impress, but it made me feel like someone who finally knew her value. Before leaving, I grabbed a small notebook, something I carried lately not for journaling but for reminders. Not of tasks, but of boundaries. Driving to my parents' house felt different this time. The road was familiar, yet I didn't feel the same person driving down it. My hands didn't shake. My chest didn't tighten. There was no nervousness, just quiet certainty. When I pulled into the driveway, Emily's brand new luxury SUV sat proudly beside Dad's old truck. I smiled faintly, not bitter, just observant. Their world hadn't changed. Mine had. I knocked on the door, even though I used to walk in. It felt symbolic. Mom opened it, surprise flickering briefly before she forced a polite smile.
Oh.
You came. Not we're glad you're here. Just acknowledgement. I stepped inside, taking in the house the same photos on the walls, mostly of Emily. The same furniture. The same energy. Except this time, I wasn't that quiet, insecure version of myself. Dad sat in the dining room reading financial papers. Emily was already at the table scrolling through her phone, not bothering to look up. No one asked how I was. No one asked what had changed. But that was fine. I wasn't here for validation. Dinner began with small talk, except it wasn't really conversation. It was Emily reporting achievements and my parents reacting like proud school teachers admiring their best student. I simply listened, eating calmly. Halfway through the meal, Dad finally acknowledged me. So, Maya, he said, wiping his mouth with a napkin, you still working at that little tech job? The way he said little made Emily smirk. I took a sip of water before responding. It's going well, I said simply. Mom chimed in with a sigh. You know, it would help if you aimed higher. Emily just got invited to speak at a conference. Isn't that wonderful? Emily put on an exaggerated, humble expression. It's nothing huge, but yeah, people see my potential. Then she looked directly at me and added, you should try harder, Maya. You can't just drift through life. There it was, the tone, the condescension, the dismissal. The version of me from months ago would have swallowed her emotions and stayed silent. But that wasn't me anymore. I set my fork down gently and looked at her, really looked. Emily, I said softly, you've always assumed I'm behind you, but you've never actually asked what I've been doing. She blinked, thrown off. My parents stared, waiting, not with curiosity, but with impatience. So, Dad said, leaning back, what exactly have you been doing that's so important? I smiled, slow, controlled, even. Well, I said, I led the development and launch of a major software project. It was successful, enough that I got promoted to project lead. Emily's expression shifted, confusion first, then disbelief. Mom frowned. Project led? For what? Customer service?
No, y replica calmly.
For product development. Dad scoffed. That must be a small team. 32 people report to me. Silence. Even the air felt different. For the first time, they didn't have a rehearsed reaction. Emily spoke first, her voice slightly sharp. So what? One promotion doesn't mean anything. You still rent. You still struggle. Mom and Dad helped me get ahead because I earned it. Something about that word, earned, hit differently now. My voice stayed steady. I didn't ask for help. I never wanted shortcuts. I just needed respect. My mother crossed her arms. Respect is earned too. I nodded slowly. You're right. I stood. But so is distance. Their eyes widened as the meaning settled. I reached into my bag and placed an envelope on the table. Inside was proof of something I hadn't shared. My financial investment statements. My new salary contract. And a letter. Not a goodbye. A boundary. Emily grabbed the papers first, her eyes darting, disbelief growing with every line. You make this much? She whispered. Dad took them next, his jaw tightened. Mom was last. Her face softened with something almost like regret. Almost. But not enough to change who they were. I picked up my notebook, slid my chair back, and said, I wish you well. Truly. But I won't stay in places where I'm belittled just because you're used to me being small. Emily whispered, So you're leaving us? I met her eyes, calm, steady, unshaken. No, I said. You already left me a long time ago. I'm just finally walking away. And then, without another word,
I did.
I thought walking away would be the end of things, a clean emotional exit, a closing chapter. But life has a way of circling back, especially when people finally realize the value they once dismissed. For a while, things were quiet. Weeks passed. No calls.
No texts. No word apologies.
Just silence, the kind that felt less like punishment and more like peace. During those weeks, my new role at work grew even more intense. I traveled for the first time, New York, then Seattle. I presented to clients. I trained new hires. I made decisions without waiting for approval, and people trusted me. It felt empowering. Somewhere in all that newness, I stopped thinking about my family every day. The ache softened. The expectation dissolved. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. I was simply living. But the moment I stopped needing them, they came back. The first sign was a voicemail from my mom, shaky, uncertain.
Maya.
We haven't heard from you. Call when you can. I didn't. 2 days later, my father called, something he rarely did, even before. Maya, your mother's worried. Come over Sunday. Not would you like to come? Not we miss you. Just an instruction. I didn't respond. But the real shift happened the following week. My sister showed up at my apartment. I opened the door expecting a smug expression, maybe one of superiority or annoyance. Instead, Emily looked small. Her makeup was smeared, her eyes red, hair messy, like she had driven in a rush. She didn't wait to be invited in. She stepped inside and stood there, breathing shakily. Maya, she said, voice cracking, I need help.
Ist her, confused, cautious.
What kind of help?
She swallowed hard.
My husband, he left. Those 3 words hung in the air like heavy bricks. She continued, voice trembling. He drained our joint account, everything. The house is in his name. I have nothing. For a second, time felt still. Emily, the polished, untouchable, always in control sister, was unraveling in front of me. She wiped her face, trying to regain her usual tone, but failing miserably. Mom and Dad said you could help me, that you're stable now. So I'm here. Not because she wanted to be, but because she had nowhere else to go. A part of me, the old Maya, wanted to fix everything immediately. But the new Maya didn't respond with emotion. She responded with clarity. Emily, I said softly, I'm sorry you're going through this. She nodded, tears falling again. But I need to ask you something. Her eyes lifted to mine, raw and vulnerable. If I were the one standing at your door, like this, would you help me? Her lips parted slightly, but no answer came. Because we both knew the truth. She wouldn't have opened the door. She wouldn't have listened to me cry. She wouldn't have offered support. After a long silence, she whispered.
No.
It wasn't angry. It wasn't defensive. It was honest. She finally understood the difference between privilege and survival, between assumed worth and earned strength. She sat down on my couch and buried her face in her hands. What do I do? She whispered. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't entitlement. It was the first genuine question she had ever asked me. I sat beside her, not close enough to comfort, but close enough to acknowledge her pain. You start over, I said quietly. You figure out who you are without comparison, without our parents' validation, without someone else defining your worth. She nodded, tears silently falling. That's what you did, isn't it? I exhaled, not proudly, not bitterly, just truthfully. Yes. We sat in that silence for a long moment, the kind that finally makes room for honesty. Then she whispered the words I never expected.
I'm sorry, Maya.
For everything. I didn't reply immediately. Because forgiveness is not a door, it's a process. Finally, I said, I appreciate the apology. Truly. But things won't go back to how they were. She nodded again. Acceptance replacing expectation. I know. Before leaving, she hesitated at the door. Maya, can I call you? Not for help, just to talk. I thought about the girl she used to be, the one who laughed with me as kids before everything turned into ranking, competition, favoritism. And I nodded. Yes. You can. She exhaled like she had been holding her breath for years. That night after she left, I sat alone in my quiet living room, the same way I had after the dinner months ago. Except this time, I wasn't broken. I was in control. And the story wasn't ending. It was shifting. I stood there, looking at my family in shock as silence wrapped around the room. No one moved. No one blinked. It was as if time froze, and all the cruelty they had thrown at me finally bounced back like a boomerang they never expected to return. Dad finally cleared his throat. "Maya," he said, softer now. "You're leaving?" I nodded.
Calm.
Peaceful. Unbothered. For good. My sister's jaw tightened. "You can't just walk away from family." I looked her directly in the eyes. "Family isn't blood. Family is respect. Family is love. Family is effort. And none of you offered that." She folded her arms, ready to argue, but her fiancé gently grabbed her wrist and shook his head. For the first time, someone supported me in front of them. I grabbed my suitcase and moved toward the door.
No tears. No checking. No hesitation.
My mother's voice finally cracked. "We raised you. You owe us." I turned slowly. "You don't get to treat someone like they're worthless and then demand loyalty. You don't get to call me useless, dependent, unwanted, then expect me to stay." I let out a long breath, steady and controlled. "I begged for love. I begged for approval. And you gave me nothing. So now." I smiled softly. "I give you nothing back." With that, I walked out. 3 months later, my life changed faster than I could process. The business I started in silence, my graphic design studio, did more than take off. It skyrocketed. Within a month, my email was flooded with clients. Within 2 months, I hired employees. Within 3 months, I opened a physical office in downtown Seattle with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that reminded me daily. I built this. Alone. My apartment was bright, modern, peaceful.
No yelling. No lectures.
No one comparing me to my sister. Just me and my work and my freedom. Sometimes at night, I'd sit by the window with tea, watching the city lights and thinking, I finally chose myself. And that choice was everything. One morning, as I sorted contracts, my receptionist buzzed me. Maya? There's a couple here claiming to be your parents. Should I send them away?" My heart stopped for a second, but then I smiled.
No.
"Bring them in." A moment later, they walked into my office, eyes wide, scanning every detail. My father looked impressed. My mother looked guilty. My sister wasn't with them. After a long silence, my mother finally spoke. "Maya, we didn't know you were doing so well." I nodded. "You never asked." Dad rubbed the back of his neck. We could use your help. Your sister's business is failing. She needs funding." And there it was. Not an apology. Not acknowledgement. Not love. Just need. I leaned back in my leather chair, folded my hands, and looked at them. Calm, collected, unshaken. "Remember what you said to me at dinner?" Their eyes dropped instantly. Dad whispered, "Yes." I repeated their exact words slowly, clearly, word by word. "Nobody needs your money or you." Dad shut his eyes. Mom's lips trembled. And my sister agreed. I continued softly. "So, why would you come here asking for help from someone who has never needed?" My mother's shoulders shook as tears formed. "Maya, we were wrong." I nodded.
Yes.
"You were." Silence hung between us, heavy and sharp. My father finally swallowed his pride and whispered, "We are asking for forgiveness." I took a breath, not out of anger, but clarity. "I forgive you," I said gently. Their heads snapped up, hopeful. "But forgiveness," I added firmly, "doesn't mean access." Their faces fell. You don't get to break someone, watch them rebuild their life without you, and then expect a seat at their table when they're finally whole. I stood slowly and walked toward the door. "I wish you well," I said softly. "But I don't owe you anything, not anymore." I opened the door, gesturing politely. They walked out silently. When the door closed behind them, I felt no guilt.
No sadness.
Just freedom. real freedom. For so long, I tried to prove I was worthy. Now,